When James Carter first moved to Chicago, he was full of ambition, wide-eyed optimism, and a firm belief that hard work would always pay off. He had left behind his small hometown in Kansas with little more than a backpack, a dream of becoming a professional designer, and a promise to his late mother that he would make something meaningful out of his life. The first few months were hard, but nothing he hadn't expected. What he hadn't anticipated was how the closer he came to success, the more intense his struggles would become. James wasn't alone in his journey. He shared a small apartment with his best friend, Marcus Reynolds, a software developer who had a knack for always landing on his feet. Marcus had seen James at his best and worst and never hesitated to remind him of his worth when things got tough. But even Marcus couldn't have predicted just how close James was to the edge. Not the edge of failure, but the brink of his breakthrough. It all started with rejection. James had worked for nearly a year on a concept portfolio that he believed would land him a top design job at one of the most respected firms in the city. He poured his soul into that portfolio. Sleepless nights, missed birthdays, skipped meals. When he finally submitted it, he was confident it would change his life. But then came the email. "We appreciate your submission but have decided to go in a different direction." James felt like he had been punched in the gut. That email was more than just a rejection. It felt like the universe was telling him he wasn't enough. He stared at the screen for what seemed like hours, the world outside his window continuing to move while he stood still. For days he didn't talk much. He barely ate. He considered giving up, packing his bags and returning to Kansas with his tail between his legs. He didn't tell Marcus right away, embarrassed by the way he felt crushed. But when Marcus finally noticed and asked, James broke down and told him everything. "I thought this was it," James said, voice cracking. "I thought this was the job that was going to prove to everyone, and to myself, that I made the right choice." Marcus looked at him, calm and steady. "You know what I think? I think you're at the final stage before something big happens. I've read stories, seen it happen to people. When things feel like they're falling apart, they're often actually falling into place." James didn't quite believe it at first. But as days passed and he slowly started to get back on his feet, he began to notice 3 distinct signs that Marcus might have been right. He didn't know it yet, but he was in the final stage before a life-changing breakthrough. The first sign was intense self-doubt. Not just the usual inner critic. This was a deeper, more persistent voice that questioned every decision, every idea. James would open his laptop to work on a new concept and suddenly feel paralyzed, wondering if he even had talent at all. It wasn't just insecurity, it was a crisis of identity. But through conversations with Marcus and late-night journal entries, James began to understand something powerful. Doubt often shows up the loudest right before clarity. The pressure was building because he was about to level up. And the discomfort he was feeling wasn't a signal to quit. It was a sign he was growing beyond his current limits. One evening, he watched an interview of a famous designer who talked about nearly quitting the year before she made it big. "Right before I landed my first real client," she had said, "I genuinely believed I was terrible at my craft. It's like the final test. If you can push through the doubt, you'll find your confidence on the other side." James took that to heart. He didn't silence the doubt completely, but he stopped letting it control him. The second sign came in the form of unexpected challenges. It was like life decided to turn up the heat. His rent increased. His freelance clients started ghosting him. One of his design files got corrupted the night before a big pitch. It was like everything was going wrong at the same time. He called his sister, Lily, in a moment of frustration. "Why does everything keep going wrong?" he asked. Lily was quiet for a moment before she responded. "Maybe it's not punishment, James. Maybe it's preparation. The universe might be trying to see if you're ready for what's next." James didn't say anything, but that thought stayed with him. The chaos wasn't random, it had a purpose. It was pressure forming a diamond. He started seeing each challenge as a chance to sharpen his focus. He fixed his corrupted file, renegotiated his rent by offering to do design work for his landlord's new real estate website, and replaced the lost freelance gigs with new clients he found through online networking forums. It didn't happen overnight, but he adapted, and he learned something vital. When you're about to level up, life tests whether you're ready for the next chapter. The third sign was the most subtle but also the most profound: synchronicity. Out of nowhere, James began running into people and situations that aligned perfectly with his goals. He met a retired art director at a coffee shop who offered to review his portfolio. A random Instagram post led him to a competition for independent designers. A stranger on LinkedIn messaged him about a collaboration opportunity. At first, James dismissed these moments as coincidences, but there were too many of them. The timing was too precise. It was as if the universe had been watching him struggle and decided to nudge him toward his destiny. One afternoon, he received a message from the director of a growing creative agency in Los Angeles. They had seen his work on a forum post and were impressed. "We're expanding," the message read. "Would you be open to a remote interview?" James stared at the screen in disbelief. His hands trembled as he typed his response. The interview was scheduled for the following Monday. He didn't tell Marcus or Lily at first, not because he didn't want to share. It just felt surreal, like he didn't want to jinx it. He prepared for days, fine-tuned his portfolio, rehearsed answers in the mirror, even meditated to calm his nerves. The interview went better than he could have imagined. They not only loved his work, they offered him a full-time role with creative freedom, excellent pay, and the option to relocate to Los Angeles if he ever wanted. That night, James stood on the rooftop of his apartment building, staring out over the Chicago skyline. The wind was cold, but he barely noticed. He thought about the email, the sleepless nights, the doubt, the chaos, and the small, almost magical alignments that led him to this point. He had made it through the final stage, and it had tested every part of him. When he shared the news with Marcus, they celebrated with cheap pizza and loud music, just like they had when they were broke and hopeful. James knew his breakthrough wasn't luck. It was the result of persistence, growth, and a quiet voice that told him not to quit even when everything said otherwise. Now he looks back and recognizes those three signs clearly: crippling self-doubt, overwhelming challenges, and meaningful synchronicities. And he tells everyone who feels like they're about to give up to hold on just a little longer. Because the final stage always feels like the end. But it's really just the beginning.